All right, let's welcome in Lieutenant Ronald Perez from the New York Police Department. Lieutenant Perez, first off, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, and thank you for allowing me to be on this podcast. Thank you to you and Tommy.
It is our pleasure. Unfortunately, Tommy can't be here right now, so I'm going to fly solo through this. But let's start with you. First off, how long have you been in law enforcement?
I've been with the NYPD for 18 years.
What made you decide that you wanted to pursue a career as a law enforcement officer?
Prior to becoming a cop, I worked as an emergency medical technician here in the city in the EMS 911 system. And as a kid, I wanted to be a cop, and I just, life led me down different paths and roads. And I met my amazing wife, and I decided that I wanted to continue this journey in public service. And I thought that, especially after the attacks of 9/11, I was still working EMS during that. After the attacks of 9/11, I decided that becoming a cop was the next progression in that, wanting to continue a life of service.
What has been your journey through the law enforcement world to your current position as a lieutenant?
I started out as a police officer. I went into the police academy July of 2002. Yeah, July 2002, I went to the police academy. Graduated in January of 2003. Started out as a patrol cop in the 83rd precinct. My first partner was who's now a detective. His name's Brian Zaccaro. We're still very, very close friends. I was promoted to sergeant in 2007, where I went to the 7-2 precinct, did 3 years as a patrol sergeant there. And then in 2010, I was picked up by the aviation unit. I came onto the department as an airplane pilot, and then I transitioned to helicopters through the department. I was promoted to lieutenant in 2012, a couple of days right before Hurricane Sandy, so October of 12. I went to PSA 3, which is the public housing precincts that cover the public housing. Did a year there, and then returned to the aviation unit for another just over 5 years. And then last October, I left the aviation unit to come work in the Community Affairs Bureau and to run the NYPD Community Center, where I'm currently posted.
Okay. As a police officer, what's it like dealing with people on a daily basis who, as an understatement, are probably not having their best days? Because it's not like people call you up when it's like, hey, I just want to let you guys know that my wife loves me and my kids are doing great in school and I just got a promotion and everything's wonderful. Why don't you come over? Like, that's not what you deal with on a daily basis.
So, yeah, no, it's true. Unfortunately, we don't always get to see people at their best. Okay. And usually I had the good fortune of coming on a little bit later in life. I was actually 32 when I graduated the police academy. So I had a lot of life experience. I was already married. I had, at that time, a 1-year-old son. So I had some life experience. I had worked EMS prior to becoming a cop, so I had experience dealing with people. So that was an advantage to me. But it still didn't prepare me fully. And I think it's hard. You have to learn how to be just as good a listener as you are a communicator. So the hardest part really is listening to somebody's problems, regardless of how severe you think they may or may not be. Somebody may be telling you that, their son isn't doing their homework and they called the police, which actually has happened to me. Meanwhile, 5 minutes before that, you were at the scene of a really bad car accident or a homicide. So this current problem pales in comparison to that, to you, but not to the person who called you. So you have to really learn to not put yourselves in their shoes, because that drains you emotionally, but realizing that they're having a bad day and you're there to try to fix it.
Yeah. And with that being said, I mean, there's obviously, there's a lot of physical, a lot of mental stress that results from that work. So what do your bodies and minds go through when you're dealing with all that?
Um, Unfortunately, in law enforcement, we have a tendency to seek less healthy alternatives to deal with our stress. Sometimes we overeat, um, oversleep, we become introverted. We don't seek relationships outside of law enforcement. Sometimes those behaviors become more dangerous than just overeating. They become turning to alcohol. And unfortunately, as we've seen across the country, there have been a lot of police suicides. So that is the ultimate bad behavior or bad way of dealing with all the stress and the situations that we deal with.
That brings me right to CrossFit, because you mentioned outlets and how sometimes you have negative outlets. It seems like CrossFit would be a positive one. So my question first is, how did you find CrossFit?
Oh, God. I love this story. So I am the father of an amazing 18-year-old college freshman who's a state level champion wrestler. And about, God, 6 years ago, we're driving around, and I was driving him somewhere. I think it was to his friend's house or something. And we passed this place, Unbeaten CrossFit, in our old neighborhood. And I look and I go, a couple of guys from work are talking about this CrossFit stuff. I think I may check it out. So my son looks at me. He's like, go ahead, go do it. I was like, yeah, whatever. Keep driving. A couple of days later, driving him to the same place. I was actually driving him to work out somewhere else at a friend's house. And a couple of days later, past the same place. Dad, you going there yet? No. Keep going. A couple of days later, past the same place, my son looks at me and says, stop the car. Going there. I just look at him. I'm like, well, I'm not ready. He goes, you're never ready, Dad. Let's just go. So my son and I actually walked into Unbeaten CrossFit. We met at the time was the head coach, Alex Rosso, who is now a New York City firefighter. Okay. And I walked in and I see all these amazing athletes, squatting and, doing snatches, which I still can't do, and doing all this magical stuff. And this really fit young man, Alex, comes walking up to me and with the biggest grin just welcomes me, and I felt a connection to him and to the place just instantly, and thus began the CrossFit journey.
That leads you then to start NYPD CrossFit. So why did you make that decision?
So yes and no. I had trained at that gym for about 4 years.
Okay.
And I had fallen through promotions and Brian Zaccaro, my old partner, through his promotions through the detective ranks. We kind of had fallen out of touch with each other. We ran into each other, sadly enough, at the funeral of a police officer. And he took one look at me and he was like, my God, what's happened to you? He's like, you look phenomenal. When I walked into Unbeaten, I was 315 pounds.
Wow.
When I saw Brian, a few years later, I was a quite svelte 205, and all the working out had done a change. It changed my body, changed my physique, changed the way I was walking, and we started talking. And I talked to him about this CrossFit thing, that we all talk about. And he says to me, I've been thinking about doing that. And this is a guy who was a All-American lacrosse player. So he was just an athlete to begin with. So now he starts doing CrossFit, absolutely falls in love with it. Now we've rekindled our friendship. We're constantly talking about CrossFit, and a couple of years later, he calls me up and he says, hey, listen, the department is doing a competition called Fittest of the Finest. And this was July of 2018. And he says, let's go compete together. Let's go check it out. And I was like, great. The department's, on board with this religion of ours, So it was being headed by Deputy Commissioner Robert Ganley, and the lieutenant running it was Lieutenant Manny Coe. So we the initial event, it was 50 people registered, 15 people showed up. It was the hottest day of the year. It was being held at Flushing Meadows Corona Park at the site of the alien aircraft from Men in Black.
Mm-hmm.
So we work out in their shadow and everything. It was great. It was absolutely hot. The next day, Brian calls me up and he says, hey, listen, he goes, that was such a great day. Thanks for coming with me. Thanks, for hanging out with me and my friends and stuff from his CrossFit box. And I look at him and I said to him on the phone, I was like, listen, I said, I have this crazy idea. I was like, why don't we start a CrossFit team within the NYPD sports unit? Okay. And we'll go around and we'll compete at different events. Maybe we'll get to the Granite Games, maybe, wow, we'll make regionals or something like that, And he basically says to me, this is the stupidest thing you've ever said. Let's do it. So that led to, I reached out to another guy, John LaDuca, who suggested that we contact Greg Amundsen and try to get affiliated. And then another guy, Evan Aronowitz, who was our coach, a CrossFit coach, who's a sergeant. And we just started bringing guys in. Like within a week, there was like 6 of us all on board, and we started this.
You talked about how CrossFit changed your body. I mean, 315 down to 205 is incredible. So how did that then affect not only your ability to do your job, but also your personal life?
Sorry.
No problem.
The ability to do the job gets greatly affected because at the time I was still flying helicopters, and you had to be a contortionist to get into those things. So I went from somebody who would like just cramp up constantly and have all kinds of issues while flying, while wearing the safety vest and harness and everything like that. And now it was easy for me to get in and out, and, having to wear a gun belt, having to wear a bullet resistant vest, all those things became lighter because you do those things when you do Murph, or you're wearing a weighted vest when you do other workouts, and you just, it became easier, and my mobility just grew exponentially. I'm still the typical CrossFit meme that, I complain to my coach about my lack of mobility, but then I don't do any mobility, but still. I'm in the minority of that club, I see. But, it changed everything about me being able to do my job much easier. But in my personal life, listen, I'm very fortunate. I have the greatest wife in the world, regardless of what anybody else thinks about their wives. So she bought in to this insanity immediately, and my love affair with, now buying whatever form of nano I can get, so it gave me much more confidence. It changed my eating habits. It changed my relationship with my son, who was an avid fitness enthusiast just because he's a wrestler, so we started CrossFitting together, so it's just, and even now my daughter's 14, she's been working out with me now in our home gym.
And then going back to the mental outlets that police officers often seek, and now you found a positive one. So mentally, what was the difference for you at that point?
I was never really a big drinker or anything like that. I was more destructive eating or emotional eating kind of a person. If I had a bad day, and I used to work midnights. So I would get out of work at like 6:45 in the morning, and I'd be in the box by like 8 o'clock, and we had our own little breakfast club for the 8 a.m. people. And it usually tended to be masters athletes. And we all just, it was all men and women who either worked midnights or had to get their kids off to school. And then 8 o'clock was the only class they could take. So that was like one of the highlights of my day. No matter how bad things were at work, no matter what I was dealing with at work, I knew that at 8 a.m. I was going to walk into that box, and I would make a habit of looking at the WOD, and if it was something that was really, really in my wheelhouse, like rowing or deadlifts, I just got so super psyched about it, And as crappy as that last radio run or that interaction was with somebody, I had this thing to look forward to. That was, I would take out all my anger, frustrations, whatever on that back squat, on that deadlift, on the rower, you know, and then of course on the assault bike. But you know, so that outlet just, it replaced the bad eating. It was, and then when I got home from that, I wouldn't want a bagel or pancakes because I just did this amazing workout. So why am I going to damage that?
Now that you have an affiliate and you have some officers working out there, what are the effects that you're seeing on your fellow officers through CrossFit?
Oh God. Everybody's just like, so they love working out. They love the camaraderie, you know, and that's one of the things, like for people, just to digress just a little bit, for those who are not in law enforcement but are avid CrossFitters, the camaraderie that you see at the end of a WOD where everybody's on the ground huffing and puffing and high-fiving each other is a camaraderie you see in law enforcement and being a firefighter and being a paramedic, emergency medical technician in the military. That's why we're so attracted to it as a community of law enforcement first responders, because it's the same exact thing. That shared pain, that shared experience, that complete and utter dislike of Dave Castro. It's all a shared. It's shared. So, you know, you have that in common. But as cops, when we go to work out together, you know, regardless of our ranks, we've had 2-star, 3-star chiefs working out with us and rookies that just came out of the academy, you know, and as we're working out together, there's no rank, you know, there's no, it's a safe space. Like if a rookie cop is sitting there and he had a bad day and me as a lieutenant, I walk over to him and I say, hey, listen, or her, and say, what happened? What's the matter? Oh, I got denied a day off. Well, why'd you get denied the day off? And you know, they have an outlet now. Because they're a young officer, it goes against tradition for them to complain about it at work, but they can complain about it to me because I'm their friend. I'm in the box with them. I just finished doing, you know, Cindy or Linda or something, or, you know, fight gone bad with them. So it puts us on equal footing.
How did the partnership with Afro Brutality come about?
So that came about at the height of the George Floyd protests. So I had been working in Manhattan during the protests. And it was like at the end of like a 17-hour day. I get back into my office. I cozy up to my nice lumpy couch at work in my office to take a nap. And I'm sitting there thumbing through my phone, just looking at our Instagram page, the NYPD Crossfit Instagram page. And I see this post from this Afro Brutality organization that follows us. And I actually wrote the post down. It was from June 6th. And it says, gotta find a effing way to bring some love in here today. You know? So I'm like, all right, you know, whatever. I click on his page and I start looking and I was like, wow, this guy's got some pretty interesting posts. So I saw that what he was calling for was for communication. In all his posts, really, it was just, let's, you know, there's two sides to this story. Let's talk and meet in the middle. So I send him a message. Hey, this is who I am. I run NYPD CrossFit. You know, at some point, I'd like to talk to you. Maybe not. I don't know. You know, ding, 2 seconds goes by. He sends me his phone number. All right. So I call him. And I'm like, hey, listen, you know, we start talking. We find out we're about the same age. We both grew up kind of similarly. You know, he's actually from a similar neighborhood as my wife. You know, I'm raised in New York City, you know, and we start talking. We find that even though he's African-American, I'm actually Puerto Rican. You know, I'm a cop, he's not. We have this thing, you know, called CrossFit, you know, and this love of that, you know. And then it's like, well, what's your friend time? You know, have you ever RX Linda? You know, so we start having those conversations. And from that, I suggest to him, hey, listen, I said, I have this crazy idea. You know, he told me that he works with a lot of youth in Harlem. I was like, I run the NYPD Community Center, which is really geared towards youth. What do you think I bring a bunch of my athletes up to Harlem? And we meet someplace in Harlem. and we have a throwdown. And he goes, you know what? I got a better idea. How about instead of doing that, you guys come up to Harlem anyway, and I partner one of my kids with one of your cops, and we have a team competition, you know? And I was like, dude, that is awesome. And then July 7th, we were up in Morningside Park, and we had our first outdoor WOD.
How tough of a sell was that for you to convince maybe some of your other officers to get involved with?
At first, I thought it was going to be a tough sell, right? So we have about 200, 225 members right now on our roster. Now, this is during the protest. The protests are going on, okay? Guys, you know, cops are working 16, 17-hour days, no days off, 12-hour shifts, whatever. 25 of our members showed up with their team shirts on, ready to go, you know? And I'm like, well, you know, weren't you just working last night? Yeah, I'm good to go. I had a couple of coffees, you know, I'm good. I stopped at Starbucks and I had, you know, some nitro. I'm good, you know? So I got a lot of buy-in. And the members that couldn't make it were sending me messages. Hey, this is a great idea. I'm sorry. I got to go back to work, you know, or I have a child care issue. So there was a lot of buy-in, and there was a lot of buy-in from the hierarchy as well. So my boss, my boss's boss, they were all like, this is a great idea, you know, and they followed it, you know, so there was a lot of buy-in.
I'm curious what the moment was like when you show up and then they show up and everyone's kind of just there and things haven't started yet. What was that moment like, and how did you break the ice?
Well, it was funny, you know, my wife jokingly said she thought it was going to be like a scene like from West Side Story. But it was funny because Syn and I, that was only our second in-person meeting. And he had promised that he was going to bring, you know, 50 kids and this, that, and the other thing. And like about 10, 15 kids show up, you know. Meanwhile, I have 25 guys, one of whom, Paul Delanoy, who's a detective in Manhattan, shows up. And Syn has known him for years and never knew that he was a cop. And Paul has competed in regionals. Paul is just an amazing athlete. He's been on Team Virtuosity. He's one of the guys that really inspired me to start all of this. But he shows up, and Syn is looking at him. He's like, what's this guy doing here? I said, well, you didn't know Paul was a cop? And that was one of the icebreakers. And then one of the young men that Syn brought up there was from the Harlem Jets, which is a youth football organization. Comes right up to me and he goes, I have a 40 time that's ridiculous. And I go, okay. I said, you look like an offensive lineman. What's your 40 time? And he's like 4.7 40 time, or 4 something 40 time. I go, all right, no problem. Paul comes walking over to me, whispers in my ear, and he goes, you know, that's a really cute 40 time. he goes, let's see how he does. Yeah. So it was, you know, so there was a lot of bantering going back and forth, and that's what broke the ice.
When this is all said and done, the first part of this, the first question I have is what if, or how, if all, do you think the perception of the kids changed through that interaction with your officers?
So the same young man who was boasting about his 40 time, when he finished throwing up, he was looking for a waste receptacle. He found a garbage can. He started throwing up. Afterwards, he came up to us and he goes, you guys are not supposed to be like this. You know, you're supposed to be eating donuts. You know, he said a couple other things, you know, colorful language, but that's, he's of age. But he said a couple of colorful things. And I think that was the best part. You know, the fact that they all thought that they were going to show up there and whip our asses, you know, that we were going to show up with donuts and coffee, you know, and none of us were going to be able to lap them, you know, none of us were going to be able to do, because we did a version of Fight Gone Bad, you know, but just with kettlebells and wall balls and plates. And none of them thought that we'd be able to do this. And we did. And we, you know, we beat, all of our times were better than any of their times. So that was the perception there. And what was funny, the other interesting part about that was they now saw something different, you know, that stereotype was broken down. So that was a really cool part of it too.
And then the flip side of that is, how do you think the perception of your officers, if at all, changed of the kids with whom they had just competed?
That was pretty cool too, because a lot of people tend to see cops as being very jaded, and we are and we aren't. You know, we're humans just like everybody else. Okay. I think the perception from us, especially given what was going on with the protests and other nefarious parts of that, we thought that they weren't going to receive us as well as they did. We thought that they would be more resistant to the idea of, no, you're not working out as a team of kids against us. We're going to partner you up with a cop, you know? So I think we all thought that they were going to be resistant to that idea of wanting to be partnered with a cop. And they weren't. They were like, okay, cool. We're just here to have fun, you know? So I think that was the perception from us going in that was broken down.
This seems like it was obviously a big success. What is the future now of this program for you guys?
So we've actually done this 5 times already. Okay. And we've done it. So what wound up happening was Chief Jeff Madry is the Chief of Community Affairs for the New York City Police Department, and he's my boss. So he knew that we were going to be doing this in Morningside Park with Afro Brutality on July 7th. So when he saw it on social media and how it took off, he reached out to me and he was like, listen, he goes, I'm hosting these town hall events where he goes out into the community. The police commissioner joins him, the hierarchy of the police department, the other chiefs, the chief of detectives, chief of patrol, they come out and they have these town hall open air meetings with the community. And these are communities where usually there's a lot of violent crime. He said to me, he goes, I want you to do this at every single one of my town halls. You know, he goes, from now on, when I'm holding a town hall, you and Afro Brutality will be there, and you're going to work out with the kids. You're going to work out with the parents. You're going to work out with everybody. We're like, okay, great. You know, so we've done this another 4 or 5 times already. We have another event planned. We were going to do it this Saturday, but because of the weather, we've now postponed it to Saturday, September 4th, here at the NYPD Community Center. So we're going to be doing that as well. We have another town hall that we're going to be doing with Chief Madry in the Queensbridge housing developments. Tomorrow we're going to be up at East 158th Street and Cortlandt Avenue in the Bronx, where we're going to do this with one of the precincts. So we're getting invitations from precincts. We're getting invitations from the Chief of Community Affairs. And then we're going to do our own thing as well. You know, so the future of this is we're going to keep doing this until somebody, a sponsor, decides that our ultimate goal is within their capabilities to help us achieve.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned how sometimes officers can be jaded, and there might be some law enforcement officers out there listening to this, be like, oh yeah, you know, well, you're just working out with kids and that's great and all, but it's really not changing anything. Why is what you're doing important?
So why is it important? Ultimately, what we'd like to do is we'd like to have free boxes all around the city of New York. It would be just amazing to have one, but in a city that's densely populated, where it takes, you know, an hour and a half to travel 16 miles, which is something I'm sure you guys are used to in California. But this is important because you walk into a box, and for every single person listening to this podcast, regardless of your race, your religion, your gender, how many times have you looked at another athlete and said, that female athlete, that African-American athlete, that Mexican athlete didn't break parallel? How many times have you done that? None. Not one of us have ever done that. Okay. I've asked 100 guys, 100 different athletes. I've asked, you know, have you ever seen somebody and went, you know, that Puerto Rican guy didn't break parallel? No, that guy didn't break parallel. That guy just lied about his reps. Okay. That's how CrossFit is. CrossFit to me is where we care about your Fran time, not your race or religion. Okay. And it's important because when you walk into a box as a cop and you're wearing a shirt that says whatever, has a name of a company on it, okay, or it says Morning Chalk up on it,
Mm-hmm.
all right, nobody knows you're a cop, you know. So now you're working out next to this 18-year-old, and you know maybe you're a level 1, and you see that his deadlift, he's rounding his back a little bit, so you correct him. You've just established a relationship, you know. Now you're out on patrol and you see that same kid, you know, oh damn, you know, that's that kid I saw at the gym. Oh my God, that's that guy that I saw working out who helped me with, so I don't blow out my back. He's a cop, you know. So that's why it's important. It's a unique and different way for us to break down barriers without us being in uniform and finding a common ground outside of the traditional stuff, because not everybody plays football, not everybody plays basketball, you know, but there's something about this that I think breaks down barriers.
What are the lessons that you've learned by going through all of this?
Oh God. Don't lie about your reps. I'll never be Matt Frazier. The lessons I've learned on my personal journey through all of this is that there's always room for growth. Okay, I'm 51. I'll be 52 in October. You know, I have a son who's a freshman in college. I have a daughter who's going into a second year high school. I've been doing this for 18 years. I'm waiting to be promoted to captain. There's always room for growth. You know, you get up in the morning, you're going to learn something new. There's always room for growth. You learn such amazing things from people, regardless of where they come from, regardless of their background, ethnicity, their age. You can learn so much from so many people. And I've learned that I truly, truly, truly do love being a cop. You know, it's a difficult job. It is sometimes incredibly thankless and incredibly stressful. But I just love being a cop because there's no 2 days alike. And it is such a family, brother, sisterhood, you know, where if I used to travel a lot to Dallas, and I had the pleasure of working out at CrossFit Heat, which is the Dallas SWAT box. And it was just one of the most welcoming environments, you know. And those are the things that you learn. You learn there's so much room for personal growth. It's such a brotherhood. It's such a family, you know, and I don't know, there's so much you can learn. You just have to be open to it.
You're obviously trying to be part of the solution here. And I think it's very easy for people to look around at everything that's going on right now and give into the despair and give into like, this is, you know, things are horrible. I don't know how we're going to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
But what gives you hope on a daily basis that things are going to get better and we are going to get to a better place?
I think I'm fortunate in the fact of where I work. So I'll be standing downstairs in the lobby, talking to you know, my subordinates, other people that I work with, my coworkers, and you know, one of the kids will come in and see me, you know, and fist bump me and say, "Hey, what's up? What's going on today?" You know, one of the things we tried to start here pre-COVID was a wrestling program, which I fell in love with the sport because of my son. But you know, I'll get a kid who'll come in and fist bump me and say, "Hey, Lou, when are we starting the wrestling program?" You know, and that's so in law enforcement parlance, Lou is a lieutenant, you know, and that's what my cops and the sergeants address me as. So now I have a kid from the community who's never seen me, never lived next to me, never known me before, calling me Lou, you know, asking me about the wrestling program. We also have other programs here in the building that I help teach, and they'll ask me about that. So what gives me hope is I think there's a lot of intelligence and compassion in young people, young cops that I help mentor, young cops that I talk to on a regular basis that haven't become jaded, that they see the same things. They see that there's so much potential for growth and there's so much potential for opportunity. So what gives me hope is I think there's a lot of intelligence in these young people today. I really do.
Well, Lieutenant Perez, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this and for everything that you're doing there in your local community. And I hope that this inspires more people like you around the country to maybe undertake some similar things. And just thank you for your service, and stay safe, and all the best to you and all your officers.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, having NYPD Crossfit on your amazing podcast. I hope and pray for the safety of everybody in California. You guys going through the wildfires, right?
Yeah.
And so all my brothers and sister cops out there, stay safe. It's a hard job. If ever anybody wants to send us a message and just bullshit, absolutely. Sorry for cursing. Absolutely. Send us a message on Instagram. We're more than happy to talk and help any other law enforcement affiliate, or if you're looking to start an affiliate, we'll help in any way we can.
Yeah, and if there's anything we can do to help you get the word out about your program or just help you take it to the next level, please don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we're looking for somebody to really buy into this idea of free community CrossFit gyms for cops and kids. And that's what we want to do here in New York. And we're hoping that somebody out there will hear this, and, just jump on in and help us establish that.
Well, I think good things are happening throughout the community, and I think things are going in the right direction. So hopefully we can get that going as well.
Absolutely. I think Mr. Rose is doing a great job.
Definitely. He definitely seems to be the right guy that we needed at this point. So
absolutely. I agree with you.
Anyway, best of luck. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We really
thank you very much. You take care of yourself and stay safe.